So, this is hilarious. So, what is an MMORPG, MMO Story Building Part 1? Um, I've thought about this video for a while, and I've thought about building an MMO for a long time. And this video is going to be basically the first part. It's going to be really just we're just going to talk about an MMORPG. What is it? Um, I think it can be broken down. I've right now an MMORPG blah blah blah. An MMORPG consists of two basic categories, and I really kind of stole this from Tips Out's video, where it's he talked about it being an MMO. There's the MMO side of it, and there's the RPG side of it. But he broke it down to just a couple simple things like competition, cooperation, community was his MMO side, and then the RPG elements were I think he had immersion, progression, and one other thing which I think I have since removed. I broke it down into more detail, and so for the MMO, the online game aspect of it, there's the competition side, right? The MMO, and competition can be broken down into like PvP, PvE, guild versus guild, and then really I laid it out into completing self-laid out goals, so you can really compete against yourself. If you really set goals out for you that you have to do and complete, that would be competition. You've got some stuff that you're competing against yourself to complete and giving yourself goals to complete. And then the other aspect of the MMO side is cooperation, and helping other players or guilds or even NPCs to achieve goals or objectives. I think covers really kind of most of the co-op stuff. I mean, you could go into more detail on cooperation, but that covers the most of it. And then community is pretty basic as well. I mean, community is really just interacting with other players or guilds, talking to other people, doing events. I mean, this really interacting could be so many different things, but we could say, speaking, events, in-world objectives, dungeons, raids, PvP, all that stuff. Like, as long as you're doing it with other people, you're helping to build a community, right? And then we talk about the RPG side of it, and I think one of the most important things with developing a world is the immersion. It's making an MMORPG is really creating that immersion. What is immersion? And I actually pulled up some different articles online about this, and I think one of the interesting ones was this guy in an article called 5 Ways to Create Immersion in MMOs. And I thought this was actually a really good article. This is from 2013. He talks about great graphics, and it's not just great graphics. There's more to it than that. And then he talks about lore, sound, realistic travel, and customization. So I looked at great graphics, and I broke it down into the visual style of the world, right? Can immerse you in the world. If when you're walking through like Elwyn Forest or something, and you're looking at the trees and you're hearing that music play, it sucks you in. You're like, wow, this is interesting. And you see the village of Goldshire. You feel some aspect of immersion. And when we talk about great graphics, we're really talking, I think we're talking about the visual style, or we're talking about consistent graphics. We're also talking about buildings and structures that should be representative of the races and the lands. And land. So if you're like in an elven city, the buildings in that city should all have kind of a elvish flavor to them. Or if it's a dwarven city, the dwarves are going to build, their architecture is going to be different than the elves. If you're in a desert, you don't expect to see a lot of big wooden log houses because there's no trees, right? If you're in the mountains, you're probably not going to see a lot of really tall castles built in the mountains. I mean, you might, but it's probably not likely. Or like if you're in the swamp, you're not going to build 15-story brick houses because they would just sink into the swamp. That makes no sense. So you have to think about the building structure should be representative of the races and of the land and the geography. So I should say and of the land's geography. And then we talk about the lore, the world history. Again, you should, if you're an elf, if you start the game and you create an elf, you're of course going to know some of the history of your race. I mean, that's who you are. you were raised and born as an elf, so you're going to know the elven history to some degree, but you're not going to know the history of other areas of the world, and you're going to have to move through the world and learn those things. And so, putting in ways for people to play the game and actually learn about other areas of the world, I think is good, but you want to make sure that you don't force people to consume that stuff, but you give them ways to consume it. Maybe some of the people you talk to give you a little bit of history on the world, and some of the people, I don't want to say quests because I don't want to see quests in the game. To me, exclamation points above people's heads and question marks above people's heads are not really that immersive. How's it going, Patrick? You wouldn't believe what I did, Patrick. You guys are going to laugh your asses off. I started this video. I opened it up and started talking and literally talked for about 45 minutes before I realized I didn't press the go live button. So everything I'm saying right now, I've already said. I just didn't hit go live. And I've done that before for like a minute or two, but I've never done it for 45 minutes. So I feel like an idiot right now, but and I was so mad that I did that. I almost stopped the stream, but I said, you know what? That was just my dry run. That was my trial. That was just a practice run. So when we talk about what is an MMORPG, we're talking about really the MMO side of it, which is competition, cooperation, community. And then we're talking about the RPG side, role-playing game, which is really, to me, there's a progression, character growth, self-worth, and immersion. To me, those are the two biggest things. And part of the immersion, again, is really the world itself. And the world itself, and I have it right here as the world. I mean, to immerse you into a game, and when you guys play an MMO or any game, any MMO type game, right? If you get into the game and you see a beautiful world and you see really interesting creatures and you see really interesting geography and terrain and lakes and rivers and mountains that make you want to walk to them and see those points and see those visual points of interest, that immerses you in the game. You're like, wow, look at those mountains over there. I wonder if I can walk up to them. Oh man, this mountain here is covered in snow and it's really steep. I wonder if I can climb it. Or here's a river that looks pretty, like the water's flowing really fast. I wonder if I can swim through that or wade through it. Those types of things immerse you in the world. So the world is obviously really, really important. Like I said, the visual style, the graphics, the art style, consistency of the art. You want to know that when you're playing that game, you're in that world. When you're talking about World of Warcraft, Azeroth, you're in Azeroth just based on the look of the world, right? And then, so the map, I think the map is something that I'm not a big fan of maps in MMOs, of like, you just open up a map and it's like, oh, hey, here's where all the stuff is in the world. To me, that breaks immersion because it's not very realistic. And a lot of MMOs, what they do is, like, when you move to a certain area, like, let's say I walk up to Goldshire and say, oh, you discovered Goldshire. But then it opens up this huge section of the map. Well, I may have discovered Goldshire, but I didn't walk all the way over there, and I didn't walk all over there. So I don't like that. And in my game, what I would rather prefer is that you have to map out the world yourself, right? You either take out a notebook at your desk and you start mapping out the world, or you go into a town and you know what? There's a map maker. What a novel idea. And you go into a town and you say, you know what? I need to find a map maker because I want to travel to this city, but I don't know how to get there. Maybe you hire a guide to take you there, an NPC guide that actually takes you there, or you go to a map maker. And based on where you are, maybe it's a small village. The map maker's not going to... He's like, oh, yeah, I've traveled all the way to World's End. But has he really traveled to World's End? Does he really know the mountain pass that you need to go through? Maybe he doesn't. It's kind of a risk for you to buy his map and to follow it. His map might take you off into the middle of nowhere with a bunch of ogres and get your butt whooped because he was just lying to you and he's just trying to make money. So to me, that's immersion. That immerses you in the world, because part of immersion is really not knowing anything about the world. And that aspect of trying to learn it, try to learn the world, and having a sense of fear, right? We're all afraid of the things we don't know to some degree, right? Fear of the unknown. And that's true even in an MMO. If you're going down around a bend that goes down into a heavily wooded forest and the sun goes down, all of a sudden it's really dark. You start hearing some really strange noises coming from the trees behind you. You might get a little bit worried. What's going to pop out? I don't even know. I've never been here before. What's in these woods? So I think that's also part of immersion. Music is also, environmental sounds, effects, water, fire, air, wind, all of that stuff can have its own kind of sound in your world and can also create immersion. When you walk through Elwyn Forest, again, I always use that because I think Elwyn Forest does elicit a lot of immersion. You hear that music playing, it's Elwyn Forest, and you're kind of sucked in. You're like, oh, this is cool. I'm in the Elwyn Forest woods outside of Stormwind, right? Hey, what's up, Cyrillian? How's it going, man? And so that also has music can have a big effect on immersion. And then character customization. And actually, this is the one that was broken out earlier on Tips Out videos. He had RPG progression, immersion, and customization. But to me, character customization, personality is really part of immersion. I mean, like when you played Dungeons and Dragons, you played role playing games. You tried to create a character that you could role play. Well, role playing is what immerses you into the game. And role playing, when you create your character and you say, "I have blue eyes and or gray eyes and you know red hair," and I'm thin. I mean, all those types of things. Maybe I got a tattoo of some tavern wench from from Blackwood Tavern. You know what I mean? That all creates points of interest and points of customization and personality that you can identify with. Identifying with your character and portraying your character in a way based on the customizations you've given him are all parts of role playing, and it's all part of immersing you into the game. So when you talk about an MMO, what is an MMO? These two basic categories cover a lot of what an MMO is, right? I mean, it really covers a lot of the meat of what really an MMO contains. Now, this is super high level, though. We can delve down into these things into a much greater degree of detail. But the next thing I want to talk about is this, which is things to consider in an MMO. And this is a great article that I found online probably about a year ago. And I actually lost the article. And I did you guys a service because I spent about 20 minutes before I started streaming this video. And I looked around the web and I found this article again. It took me about 20 minutes. So, and I also want to say this guy, he says, before announcing to the world that you're going to make an MMO, you need to think about it. Here are some questions to help you with an admitted heavy bias towards social virtual worlds and MMORPGs, because that's what this particular person was going to make. And I also like that he referenced some of the stuff that he got his inspiration from and concepts. Bartle's Designing Virtual Worlds, which I've heard of that. Ralph Koster's Theory of Fun, David Michael's Indie Game Development Guide, along with Bartle's Mud Dev L Archives and other sources. Bartle, Koster, and Mud Dev are pretty much required reading. I have not read these. This one here, I'm familiar with. I have not read it. And this one, I've actually read a few chapters of Theory of Fun. That's a good book. So anyways, he drew a lot from these books. So first are the real biggies in an MMO. Things you need to think about are community and economy. Now, we touched upon community a little bit in my basic, what is an MMORPG, but we can go a lot more in detail into the economy, and some of the things. And before we even get into what he says, we can talk about economy from the aspect of the way I look at it in MMOs. It's like how if you say that I'm going to start off and there's certain races to pick from, right? When you start an MMO, the first question you always have to decide the answer to is, what race do I want to play, right? That's usually the first thing you have to decide. Now, let's say you're playing like in the world of Conan the Barbarian, right? You're playing, you're from Samaria, like you're a barbarian, right? But what if you were like from, the Hyrcanian steppes, or you're from the there's some of these, I don't remember all the Stygians. You're from the Stygian lands of Stygia. Each one of those different lands have different proficiencies. Like some are known as great wizards, some are known as great, like the Sumerians are known as great warriors and barbarians, and some might be known as scholars, right? And the people from Plum, and I'm transversing over to Michael Moorcock's novels, but the people from the island of Plum are great archers and great philosophers and great lovers, right? So they might be like maybe some bards or something like that. But that's all part of that's the first part you have to decide is what race do I want to pick. But the race also you have to think about when you become that character race. You have to think about the economy of those people, and you have to think about their community, and you have to think about what makes them who they are, right? If you think about, I think Lord of the Rings is probably the best example I could use. If you think about Bilbo Baggins, right? He's a hobbit. Well, what are the hobbits like? What is their economy? Well, the hobbits are big. They're kind of a small race of people that like to kind of live in their own small little area of the world. They're pretty reclusive. They don't like to go out into the world of the big folk, as they like to say, right? And so their economy is based mostly on just growing. I mean, they grow crops, and they have people that are probably they grow the pipe tobacco, right? There's some people create tobacco. Some of them make ale, right? They brew ale, and so they're a pretty earth-friendly group of people. And as far as like how they make money is they probably trade. Like we know that their pipe weed was really sought after You know, I can't remember what they called it, the old something South Farley weed, or I don't know, but it was very popular. So other people, like even humanoids, would come to them and would barter for their tobacco. So that's one of their exports. So you think about the economy of your MMO, you have to think about what races, how the races make their money. And that all falls into creating a world that's believable. When you go into a dwarven village, you might see a lot of blacksmiths, you might see a lot of jewel crafters, because they also happen to live underground, and so they live in the mountains. They have more access to jewels and gems, or so it's natural that they would be good at working with those particular things. And of course, they would sell the things that they made out of iron, like weapons and armor, and maybe jewels and gems and necklaces and rings, and those are the things that are their exports to help make them money. And the things they might need might be wood. They might not have a lot of lumber, right? The hobbits ain't growing tobacco, but they sure do smoke something. So relevant. They do grow tobacco. Maybe it was the South Farley was growing tobacco, right? It was the South Farley, right? But yeah, so you have to think about the economy of the game, and it should make sense. And I think all of that is something that should be a small synopsis when you start to log into your MMO. Say, do you want to be this? And just give a very brief, these people live in this type of area of the world. So say maybe they're in the mountains, maybe they're a forest dwelling people, maybe they're a desert dwelling people, maybe they live in the plains, and then just give them like a little bit of an example of, these are the type of things that they make, they manufacture, or these are the type of traits that they have. Maybe if they live out in the weeping wastes and it's very difficult and a hard life, you develop a high resistance to poisons. Because there's a lot of scorpions out there. There's a lot of snakes in the wastelands, and so you're getting bit a lot. So you either die as survival of the fittest, or you survive, and because of that, you develop a strong resistance to you develop a natural resistance to poisons. You develop you develop a lot of good archers and fighters and maybe thieves or maybe rangers. You're not really rangers, that's more woodlands, but more trackers. You're good at tracking, and maybe you're good at finding water, or you're good at finding certain foods, and maybe your cooking's a lot better. I don't know. Yeah, like the dwarves in Lineage 2 do the spoil. Yeah, and Lineage 2 is a great game, Patrick. So, I think you have to think about the economy of the game, and you have to think about how that affects your player character choices. Okay, so then we talk about how do you promote communities in the game. Teleport to friend communal activities, storytelling, shared web. So this is basically promoting communities outside of the game, like, Discord, websites, that type of stuff. This is something to think about when you first start encouraging people to learn about your games. This is more like advertising of your video game. How large should the communities be? Again, I'm not too concerned about this one. We're going to move on to the next one. How big are the player-made towns? So are you going to have player-made towns? Are you going to have in-game areas where players may actually create towns? They may build their own villages and stuff like that. That's all part of a pretty big topic. That's a big topic. That type of system would be very difficult to create. How do informal communities promote themselves to permanent formal communities? We're going to worry about that one again. We'll skip this. How do hierarchies get promoted? Again, you guys can read this, but these are things that you don't see in a lot of MMOs, to be honest. We have tools, community members now. This is just group websites, mailing lists, tools inside the game where people can maybe put information. Where you have, like, he's talking about group property ownership. So this would be something like in New World, where you build, like, where you and a guild craft a huge fort, and then when other players in the game come up to that fort, it'll say, hey, this fort's owned by such and such guild. So those are some of the tools inside the game that can kind of promote a little bit of community, because you're saying, hey, these people have built this fort, and I like their fort, and I want a fort like that. So you know what? Maybe I need a community. Maybe I need to get into a group of players so that we can do the same thing. So this whole section is him talking about how you can kind of foster a good community in the game for people to want to play. And of course, we'll encourage the use of TeamSpeak, Skype, Facebook, etc. And the economy, I kind of touched upon the economy already. Will there be a supply and demand market? Do we need an economy? I think most MMOs kind of have the auction type house-based economy. I think player trading obviously is a really big thing, being able to trade with other players. One thing that Lineage 2, Patrick, what they did, which was really interesting, is you just set up your own shops. So when you were going to log off, instead of logging off out of the game, what you do in Lineage 2 is you would sit down in a city, in a square, and you would put up little auctions, and you would say, I want to sell, I've got like 100 iron ore, and I've got 100 potions of healing. and I've got 100 potions of mana, and I've got 155 linen cloth. And you would put up 4 different auctions, and people would see you sitting there, and you could put up an advertisement message, almost like a bulletin board that people would see when they walked up. They say, "Hey, there's this guy sitting over there," and above his head there's this little balloon text that says selling cloth, healing pots, healing mana pots, and iron ore. And then you could walk up to that player, interact with them, and buy that stuff. And so that player is not even playing the game. He's sitting home watching Netflix, but he's logged into the game, and his character's actively trying to sell stuff by just sitting there and having a shop open. I actually like that. I think that's a pretty cool way, but it does foster some interesting aspects of, I mean, it's probably a little better to have an auction house, but that was an interesting way of doing it, and Lineage 2 did it that way. Fixed or free economy, aka wordlessness or hyperinflation. I think free economy, where we have, the prices can fluctuate. Do you need NPC economy? That is, where does the iron for swords come from? Dwarven miners. This is kind of an interesting thing. Like, where are the NPCs getting stuff for the economy? I mean, that would be the. I don't think so. I don't think we would. I think it's nice to show that NPCs are actively doing stuff in a town that would actually they would use to get, like having NPCs running around with bags of iron on their back or wheelbarrows, and having NPCs craft, in a blacksmith, hammering out swords and stuff it's great for immersion. But I don't think you have to keep track of, the NPCs are going to the mine over here and taking all the ore from you, and so you actually have to go there and maybe knock a couple of NPCs out so that you can get the iron ore because they're taking all the iron ore. That I'm not too worried about doing something like that. Does persistency differ from region to region? I think this is actually a really good question, and I think there should be a variation in what's available from region to region. I'm not sure what he means by call crafted objects. How do you call crafted objects? I guess he's just saying get rid of them. I think one of the easiest ways to do calling crafted objects is that objects don't survive forever. That objects take damage, and there's some games like Lineage 2 or some other games like even like Black Desert, or some games, but usually they have ways to bring in objects back. If it's like getting damaged and you repair it. Like, let's say the weapon has a, what do they call it? Not survivability. I can't think of the word, but the weapon has, it's got like stats on it, and it's like 100. Like, you have a sword, right? So you've got a long sword. Durability. That's what I was trying to think. Long sword durability of 100. And after being out and killing a bunch of monsters for 3 hours, your durability is 80. And you go to a blacksmith and you repair, but it can only be repaired to 90. And then this just repeats. Next thing you know, your sword's down to 80, then it's down to 70, then it's down to 60, and next thing you know, it's broken. So that's one way to get rid of weapons in the game. But in most games, they will add something else into the game that brings. Thanks, Yisrael. I knew it would come to me. Most games will add something into the game that allows you to bring it all the way back to its max durability, and that's a way of making other items in the game that are worth money, and that increases the economy. Let's say there's certain, certain gemstones or certain, ore that, if given to a blacksmith, during repair will do full recovery, right? Full recovery of durability. And I'm typing this out so I can remember what I talked about in case I want to add this to a document. So, do we need to worry about having items break? And I think one thing that I would like to add to the game is critical fail, right? Remember, you have critical hits, right? Critical misses. We have critical hits in most MMORPGs, but have you ever played an MMORPG where you have a critical miss? And critical miss is something I definitely wanted to put into my MMOs, and it's something that I don't think I've ever seen in an MMO. Critical miss, and then guess what? We've got critical miss. And we're gonna. And let's say you critical miss, and you get a critical miss, right? And now the game is going to roll on a chart on your critical miss. And let's say it rolls a 0, 2, 1. Weapon breaks. Your weapon is now broken and useless. The game rolls a random number of 2 to 6. Weapon suffers permanent 20% durability loss, okay, etc. And you kind of get where I'm going with this, right? And let's say this can only go up to maybe up to the possible, you know, I don't know, let's just say it goes up to 12, right? Meaning, you know, we have 2 to 6. Let's say it's 3. Let's say it's 4 after every one of these. So 0 to 1. Then we're going to say 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to say 6. 6, 7, 8, 9. 6, 7, 8, 9. And then after that, it'll be like 10 to 13. And then it'll be 14 to 14, 15, 17. And then 18 to 20 or something, okay? And each of these ranges will have a different effect. And it's something that I haven't seen ever in MMOs, but I used to use it in Dungeons & Dragons. And this is definitely something that I want to, you know, that I want to put into my game, okay? How will you deal with trash? Objects need to be decomposed. Will stuff can reset out of sight? This is interesting. I think this question really is, like, if you throw something on the ground, can other players see it? Can other players pick it up? Like, again, in Lineage 2, I could go up to anywhere out in the world, and I could drag gold from my gold pouch and drag it to the screen and let go, and it would bring up a calculator or like a number, and I could type in, oh, I want to drop 200 gold pieces. And then all of a sudden, the gold would go shing, 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 and drop on the ground, which I love, by the way. I love the sound. It's like, you know, and also people would do that and make all sorts of little cool things on the ground. They'd draw pictures and shit and write out messages. They would drop gold every few inches on the screen and actually craft really elaborate image, you know, paintings and pictures and messages, you know, cute Faith was here, right? In gold. But if you drag that out, you could actually then log on another character on and just walk over to that same area and grab the gold. And so that was one of the easiest ways to trade gear between your characters, is I would swim under a bridge. There was a bridge in one town, right outside of one of the small towns, that was over water, and I would literally swim my character under the bridge, underwater, drop a bunch of gear, and beforehand I would place my other character right in that exact same spot, log out my other character over, swim to that exact spot, drop some armor, really quick, log into the character and grab it. You know, and sometimes someone might see you do it and they'd go up there and steal it from you, and that's just a risk you took. So that's something that most MMOs don't have, but that's kind of what they're talking about here. Do objects need to decompose? So would you be able to drop something on the ground? And then if mobs drop gear and stuff and you don't pick it up, is it lootable by other players? If it's not lootable by other players, how long before it disappears? Now some of the less headbanging ones still. If you can't answer the great majority of these questions about your MMO, what makes you think you're ready to start building it? Get back to designing. MMO appearance, is it text? You know, third person, first person? Is it isometric view? Genre? Genre. Is it fantasy? Is a fantasy MMO? I mean, that's 9% of the market is fantasy. I want to put in some cyborg. I'm going to be fantasy plus cybernetics. Okay, so that's just me. Where did I pull that statistic from? He's got some weird statistics link here. I'll have to check this out. Do you have gameplay, quests, etc.? How important is it? You know, do you want to have quests? I don't find that quests are very immersive. I find that quests, I think you have to have quests or things that you're going to do in your game, but I don't think that having question marks over people's heads or yellow exclamation points over people's heads are immersive at all. In fact, I think it breaks immersion, and I'm adamantly opposed to ever seeing anything over an NPC's head other than him saying something to you, like a bubble that's just a communication speech. Hey, what's up? Why don't you come over here and have a drink? You know? Excuse me. And what platform are you going to support? You know, it's going to be Windows, you know, Xbox, PlayStation. How much you can sell your game for? Will there be expansion packs? How long do you project your beta period to last? This is a great question. 100K users, that, you know, what is a good success for you? A lot of MMOs say that if they get 100,000 users, it's a successful game. Will the whole game have desire and post story? So is it going to be linear, being that you've got to, do you have to, like, okay, you start off the game and the game forces you to maybe defeat a dragon. Until you defeat this dragon, a lot of other story points or a lot of other content in the game is gated. So basically, is there going to be gated content? Which, again, I'm not a real big fan of gated content. I think having some hidden content or gated content is okay, but I wouldn't want to enforce too much of that. I think people should be able to do what they want. Okay, will it be a single seamless world, or split into zones, or even separate shards? I think for this, it's hard to make a game that's completely seamless. For me, I have no, like, World of Warcraft it's not completely seamless, but when you're on one zone, you can pretty much walk from the bottom of one zone, the Eastern Kingdoms, all the way to the top without having to zone, which is actually really cool, and I like that. I would like to. I think that increases immersion when you don't have to port or zone or load anything. That's so that's but this is just really a technical question. Can you do it? Info versus immersion. This one, this one's interesting. Are you going to display 25 burst damage, or you're just going to say, oh my god, their bar, like you hit somebody, and you see a number that pops up and says 25, 25 damage, and then you see their health bar drop like a certain amount, or you're not going to show the damage, but you're just going to show their health bar drop. I think I agree that putting numbers up there like 25, 50, and all that is a little bit immersion breaking. And it also kind of gets people focusing more on damage than on playing the game. So I think the jury's out on this one. For me, I'm leaning towards the damage numbers because I like being able to, as a player, kind of figure out how much health mobs have and how much damage I'm doing. It's kind of fun to see, and it's kind of fun to calculate the numbers with a calculator and be like, oh yeah, this and that. But it can also be immersion breaking, and it also can develop, as you guys know, those horrible asshole damage linking number players and all that kind of stuff. So this is something I haven't decided on whether or not I would go that route or not. The breakpoints, this is interesting. Let's say you have a level 1 character who's got 1 XP, and until he gets to 1000 XP, he's still level 1. But someone with 999 XP is far weaker than someone with 1000 XP. So a good example here is I'm playing a paladin, and I'm a level 5, and I feel kind of weak. I'm killing mobs. I don't have any abilities other than just throwing out my Seal of Righteousness, and I'm not doing much damage. And all of a sudden, I hit level 6. I go to my trainer, and I learn Judgment. Now I go up to someone, and I go up to character, and I throw my Judgment, hit Judgment, and I do huge damage. I'm doing like maybe twice as much damage as I was before. The only difference is now I'm level 6 as opposed to level 5. That's kind of what he's calling a breakpoint, where there's a huge jump in a character strength, and I'm not a fan of this particular thing. I think that players should, the arc, I think the arc for a character's growth and strength, we should try to keep it as like, we should try to keep it, pretty smooth, right? So, oops. We should kind of try to make it like a pretty smooth line. So, this is level, this is level 2. This is level 3. This is level 4. This is level 5. So it's a nice steady progression as you level up. It's consistent. I definitely feel like I'm getting sick, guys. I hope I'm not. Bears can start at any age, so in game. This is weird. This is like if you actually let people start at different ages. Of course, this is not something I would do, so I'm not really worried about that. I'm not gonna play the game and say, "Hey, I want to start off as an 80-year-old beggar." And then if someone else says, "Well, I want to start off as a 12-year-old girl," and by the time she gets 13, she's learned how to use a sword and is an expert swordsman. But this 80-year-old guy, he's 80 and she's only 13, but she can kick his ass because she knows how to use a sword. I don't know. It's not something I really think about. Will you have natural selection? This is a great question here. Character classes less used become more powerful. Oft-killed monsters become less valuable. I think this is a super, super awesome question. So, let's say we're going into Ungoro Crater. We're going to kill these Devil Sores because we want to get Devil Sword leather. We know the Devil Sword leather is worth a lot of money. The problem is everybody knows the Devil Sword leather is worth a lot of money. So everybody's running to Ungoro Crater to kill Devil Sores. So guess what happens? They become so massively hunted that huge groups of people are trying to get it, and it's just a well-known area to go. And so what happens is it creates these big choke points in the game where it's hard to get certain items because everybody knows where to get them. And this is a really cool system which I think I would totally implement in my game, where if there was the more people that killed the Devil Sores, the less chance they would have to drop the leather. That way, as it gets super, super crowded, guess what? No Devil Sword leather is dropping. So that's just going to force people to go do something else. So then that funnels people out of that area. So what you would do is you would say, well, I know Devil Sword leather drops, but I also know that if there's 1,000 people farming it, it's not going to be dropping much. So if you move through the zone and you don't see anybody killing them, you're going to kill them because you're going to know, hey, I might get some. But if you see a shit ton of people killing them, you're not going to waste your time. So actually, this is going to help funnel people out and not make it such a heavily populated area. So I actually really like that mechanic. Will you have keys? Yeah, I like this. I like the keys. You know, like UBRS, having a key to open a certain lock that maybe other players don't have. I think that's a great mechanic. You know, so you can open doors for certain people, and that can be useful. I like that. Is your design making an MMO reporting a story? It seems common to take a story, e.g. Princess Bride, and try to make everyone in it possible in the game. No, I'm not a fan of that. My MMO would be basically, yeah, I'm influenced by other genres and other games, and maybe fantasy stories, fantasy movies, maybe sci-fi movies. I think I was influenced by stuff that wasn't even anything to do with the fantasy, but it gave me ideas on creating something in my fantasy game. So my game would be more original. How complex do you want your AI to be? I think most MMOs are really weak in this area, and I think this is something that I would definitely want to make better. For example, this is, let's say I'm walking through the woods and a gnoll comes out, starts running at me, and I pull out my bow and I start shooting at him. I might hit him with the first arrow, the second arrow, and then the gnoll says, you know what? I still got another 10 feet to get to this guy. I'm going to run behind a tree, you know? You know, and I don't, you know, so that's just simple. It's not that complicated AI, but how often do you see monsters... Hey, what's up, John? How you doing, man? I mean, how often do you see monsters try to avoid you because you're, you know... I mean, monster's not stupid. It doesn't just run right through a bunch of arrows just to get to you. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think AI is something that we really need to improve upon. And I know, like I said, Microsoft's got some AI with monsters right now that players are having a hard time beating the monsters. From what I heard, that players can't even beat the monsters that are using the new AI they have because the AI is just too intelligent. Which, you know, you can definitely have AI that's too smart. Have you picked a familiar world or got a license? Okay, this is, you know, have I branded my game yet? Have I gotten a copyright? No, I have not. This is something you definitely want to think about when making your game. So, like, you don't want to release too much information about your game, and you'd like to kind of hold it all hush-hush, which, you know, I'm not very good at doing. I'm a pretty wide-open person, so everybody probably knows about what I want to do, and they're going to steal all my ideas, probably make a game called, you know, the name of the game I want, and I'll never get to be able to make my game. How many MMO players are female? And this is just, you know, your target market. Are you trying to get, you know, guys, girls? Are you trying to go for a certain age range? You know, just something to consider, right? How much change can players make within the world? So this is like, can players maybe, is there stuff that's destroyable? Could they maybe kill NPCs that maybe you can't resurrect? Or maybe maybe they can run for governor, you know, and change the rules, the taxes and stuff like that. Or is it going to be one of those games where that can't happen? So like when you went to a town, the NPCs always sold certain things at a certain price. Whereas maybe if in a game where you could run for mayor and you could take over, you could charge more expensive rates for dwarves because you hate dwarves. You know, that's something you could think about. What is your definition of success? Again, I say 100K players is pretty common for people, MMO makers. So this is a question for game developers. If you are unsuccessful, how are you going to get more people? So he's trying to make you think about trying to get more people in your game. How would you do it? How would you go about it? So these are just planning for scenarios that could be bad scenarios that you have to try to overcome. If you're overly successful, how do you scale the game? That's another great question. Do you have gods? If so, can players distinguish? Another good question. I'm not going to go into that. That's, you know, what is the customer service plan? I'm not going to go into that too much right now. I'm just trying to touch upon things I think are really good. These things still need more, like, research on my part. How do you prevent bugginess poor testing? What was your QA plan? Again, this needs more research. What are essential word objects the graphic guys must complete by the end of alpha? I think that's a great, this is a great point here. So to know that when you're developing a game and you're saying, okay, I'm in alpha and I'm updating my game, what is the bottom basement? What is the least amount of stuff I can have done before I declare that this game is ready for beta? So that's a good question. Same thing with essential world behaviors. That coders must complete, you know, what world behaviors must the coders have done before, you know, by the time alpha is over. What is your recovery strategy for hacks that you undetected? You know, interesting. You know, trying to plan for people, you know, using exploits and hacking your game is something you have to think about. Do you care about, you know, bots and cyborgs and gold miners? Again, just something you have to think about that and answer that question for yourself. And how are you gonna handle that if you do care about them? What do you do for elder game once people have won? So if people run out of content, how are you gonna handle that? That's again another question. These are just pretty basic stuff. Like if people have, you know, you might have to rush out an expansion because everybody's completing your game too quickly. So I think that's not going to be a big issue because my game's going to be ultra hard. So good luck trying to complete my game quick. Oh, hey, John. Well, yeah, I've been a dungeon master for years back, but what about dungeons random procedural? No. As far as the random procedural dungeons, that's something I haven't really. I've thought about it on and off. I think that I think procedural based stuff is good for certain things, but as far as dungeons, I think it's something that I would like to do. I think doing procedural stuff definitely prevents people from just putting up guides online and say, hey, just go here and do this and go here and do this and doom, you're done. Your quest is done. You know, or you found this certain item, right? I think procedural stuff is really good, but also it adds a lot of time to the development of your game because you have to put in those procedural elements and you got to put it in a whole procedural engine. But I think the way I was thinking about it is I might have like 20 or 30 different locations for a certain objective, and so it wouldn't really be procedural. It would be just that I have a random set of places where it could spawn that particular item, or that particular cave would be in a certain place in the world. And it would be random. And it would be one of like 30 places. So someone may say, hey, yeah, I know that cave, it's over there. And you might go there and it might be there, but you might go there and it might not be there. So that's one way I thought about trying to compete with people just doing straight up guides. But of course, once all 30 locations have been found, then, then the guide's going to say, well, it's one of these 30 places. That still is not that helpful if it's that many. But I think procedural dungeons are a great way to go. I'm losing my voice and I'm getting a sore throat, so I'm going to have to stop here pretty soon. But I think that's a good way to go for sure. Our name's a valuable resource. Yes, no, you're wrong. People will pay money for specific names. Name hoarders. If you allow this, if you don't, how do you prevent it? I think one of the ways to prevent this is allow first name. Allow first name, last name with periods. Or even with spaces, or even spaces. I mean, I think if people want to have, a name Faith, you could be Faith. If people really want the name Faith, if you allow periods, if you allow spaces in the name, someone could create a name that's Faith No More, or Faith, or just Faith. And someone really wants Faith, well, they could be Faith, Amber, Faith. I think allowing names with spaces or periods can really prevent a lot of these issues. And I don't know why that more MMOs don't do that. I don't know if it's a lookup thing, if they're a database that is just a performance hit. It could be, because you don't see too many games that allow spaces or periods. Do you sell window dressing eye candy items? I think this is a big yes. I think you really should sell eye candy items. It's just a good way to make money. Permit description downsides include inappropriateness. Yeah. I think that you have to have a game master who basically just handles people doing inappropriate behavior or inappropriate, if people are doing like a character name that's obviously, not appropriate. I think you have to have rules in place that say if you do this, you're going to get banned, or your character will be deleted, or you'll be temp banned, or something, or you'll be forced to change your name. Until you change your name, you can't play the game. And if you have something in your description, same thing. If you don't fix it, you won't be able to log in. What will your admin's charter or player's bill of rights look like? I'm not sure what this is. I'll have to look that up. How do you define enforced conscience like ownership? I'm going to skip through some of these because I think I'm going to stop. I hate to do this, guys, but my throat's really starting to get hoarse. And I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a fever here, so I'm going to probably stop the video. But there's a lot more here. This was an article a guy put out. And let's go ahead and put a little separation point here. Okay, so let's say that we ended. So next time I do this video, I'll start there on this piece, this section, right? But there's also, other stuff I want to discuss. I've got, let's see, what else was those? I'll give you guys, things I've kind of touched upon before is project. This is a project overview for my game. One of the races that I've identified is called the Shreen. Environment world creation. This is just me talking about what are the assets I'm going to need for the world. We're going to need trees, foliage, boulders, rocks. These are the primary, assets you need out in the world. And then, of course, you're going to have structures and buildings. So, and once you get into environment assets, we're going to have buildings, obviously town halls, inns, bars, stables, blacksmiths. There's lots of good side websites you can go to find out what are the typical types of things. I've even got books on this. What are the typical types of things you would find in a town, in a fantasy or a medieval town. NPCs, vendor, tradesmen, barmaids, bartenders, blacksmiths, etc. And there's going to be your town landmarks. There might be, nearby mountain, stream, volcano. I don't know, volcano, pit, wells. There could be not wells. How about caves? So all kinds of stuff, right? And then there's also, again, world components. I talked about this a little bit more, types of buildings. Yeah, it's funny because basically this is kind of similar to the other one, so very similar, but biomes. Excuse me. What kind of biomes are we going to support? We'll have mountainous regions, plains, forests, deserts, grasslands, icy areas, swamp. This is a really interesting one because you see swamps in MMOs all the time, but you don't really see them being affecting your gear. So one thing with the swamps is I definitely want there to be gear effects based on terrain and movement modifiers based on terrain. Okay, should be saved. And yeah, so really the critical miss is something I want to add. Damage to gear based on environment is something I want to talk about. It's something I want to put in. There's some additional tables too. Random. What else? Hold on one second. We talked about damage numbers. So I think another thing, random. One thing that you used to see in Dungeons and Dragons all the time was random encounters, right? So random encounters, we're definitely gonna have these. So like forest encounters, it'll be based on region, right? So random encounters based on region, proximity, towns or areas of proximity towns or any area where people congregate, right? You could do random encounters. As far as what else? So Patrick, professions, yeah. I think for professions, yeah, I definitely have already got ideas on professions. And I don't know. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me go to my Google Drive. I'm looking for my document. I actually have a kind of a game overview document that I've already created. I'm just trying to find it. Can't believe I can't find my document reference material. Yeah, I've already got in-game system ideas. I've also got phases of weather effects on gear. I've already got ideas for world building. Yeah, but as far as the professions, I can tell you, and I talked about this before, but I can talk about it again. The ones I was thinking about would be there would be life skills, and hold on a second. Let me find this document because I have all this laid out already. Just can't believe I can't find my document. Okay, I found it. Okay, so what I called it were this. I called core gaming systems is what I called it. And I know I've touched upon this before. And then I also have what I call normal life systems and core advanced life systems. Normal life systems would be stuff like weapon skills, thievery, escape tactics, healing. These are just some basic stuff. Thievery would be stuff like pickpockets, backstab, pick lock, remove / create traps, and evasion. Actually, evasion and escape tactics are all part of thievery, right? Yeah, and then healing. You are skilled in herb finding and the making, potions, tonics, poultices, and bandages. So this would still just be a normal life system. There's no special skill. You don't have to have any kind of special training. I mean, you can go to someone that can help you learn these types of things, but it's more about learning how to do certain things and just doing them. It's kind of like in Skyrim, where if you make potions, you get better and better at making potions. If you use a longsword, you get better and better at using a longsword. It's kind of going to be like that. But this is just like a sample, small sample size of what these would be. The core gaming systems are going to be really, these are the core gaming systems, the normal life systems, and what I call the core advanced life systems. Now, the core advanced life systems for my game, and I've talked about this before, they are elemental magic, cybernetic, divine, or demonic. And this is pretty much all I have right now. Now, this is going to fall, but I'm probably going to add more. I mean, obviously this would be fire, wind, earth, air. And cybernetic would be, I almost would be technology. And, basically technology. I'm going to leave it just at that, okay? And divine or demonic, I'm going to kind of just say that, based on, I'll just say that you basically are either going to be worshiping a god. You're either going to have a patron who's like a good god, like a good lawful god or deity, or you're going to have a patron who might be a evil, deity or demon. You may try to capture demons and force them to do your bidding if you're more of a demonic type worshiper. Or you're going to be someone who maybe does good things, but because you do good things, you save villages, or you study in prayer, and you do different things that builds up good faith with your deity. You develop a higher level of trust of that deity, of that god, or that lawful, that good god. I don't know how to say that. There's better ways to say this, but by doing that, you will start to gain their favor, and they may be able to help you in certain ways, or grant you certain abilities or certain special powers that can only be used in certain rare instances. Or they may be able to grant you with some sort of sight or knowledge that maybe you've gotten through prayer, that you've learned about this knowledge, and that can put you on the path to study this knowledge and then gain an ability based on that. So yeah, so that's some of the stuff though, but there's a lot more that I'd have to hash out. I mean, the damage numbers, the damage systems, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. But anyways, for this video, all I really wanted to talk about was really, what is an MMORPG? And I think I covered that. And then just kind of like some of the things to consider. Now, we only went through some of this stuff. And the other thing is, And I cover a lot of this in my, and I've already done a video like this on my channel. And if you guys haven't seen it, I'll put the link to that video in the information on this video. You guys can go check it out because it covers some other stuff as well. That's similar to story. That's very similar to some of the stuff that I cover here. But I am going to stop the video here, guys, because I'm not feeling very good. I'm getting a sore throat. And I appreciate you guys stopping by. And if you have any comments, or anybody who watches this video, if you have comments or suggestions or ideas, put comments in description and let me know. But yeah, the professions will definitely be there, and magic will be incredibly rare. So you're not going to be going out and killing monsters just specifically to get magic, because the chance of you getting magic is not going to be very good, right? You're better off to focus on getting good at making just a longsword and making a fine quality longsword, which will allow your longsword to do more damage, right? So what's going to be more likely that you're going to want to focus on is if you are a blacksmith, right? You might craft a longsword. It has a quality rating of average. It does a damage of 1 to 4, right? As you get better at crafting weapons, you might craft a longsword of quality, good. And it does damage of 1 to 6. And as you get really good at working metal, you might make a longsword with a quality of excellent. And this damage is going to be 1 to 8. Okay, so this will be more like what I would put into the game. It won't be magic so much. Magic will be like incredibly rare, but if you are someone who worships demons, or you learn demonic magic, and you summon a lesser fire elemental and defeat him in combat, you can have a chance, RNG for the win, of binding that demon into a item. If you bind it into chess piece, it may grant you 20%. If he's lesser, let's say 15%. Fire. 15% fire resistance. But again, it's RNG. It may grant, or when struck in combat, you deal 1 to 4 fire damage to the attacker. If you bind the demon to a sword, it may deal 1 to 4 more fire damage, or it may have a chance of sending a fireball at your enemy, or it may simply burst into flame, dealing an extra 2 points of damage. So you can just, you can that's just some of my ideas around, basically like kind of weapons that would be, more useful. Items that you would be trying to attain, and how you could progress, your character a little bit in the way of maybe weaponry. But being able to bind a demon in general would be very difficult, because you have to first figure out how do I even summon a demon. So that's one hurdle you have to get over. The next hurdle is, now you got to fight the demon. How am I going to beat him, right? So that's your next hurdle. And then once you beat him, how do you bind him to something? That's your third hurdle. And then once you bind him to something, how can you influence the binding in a way that maybe you'll get the effect you really are looking for? Maybe there's 3 or 4 different types of effects that could happen. So you've got maybe 4 or 5 different hurdles to think about just to do that one thing. And I would say that in-game time, like real-world time that I would want a player to invest to actually get to that point would be 6 months, right? 6 months of game time in the game before they would even be able, 6 months of real-world time before they would get to the point where they were actually binding stuff that they were good enough to actually bind them in a way to get just the effect they wanted on that item. So now they may be able to summon a demon after a couple months, but then would they be able to defeat him in combat? Who knows? So that's just some of the stuff I'm thinking about. As far as contacting me, John, just you can always leave comments here, or you can go to my Discord. I know I've linked to the Discord before. Just join the Discord for my channel, and you can feel free to just comment in the general section. I don't know if I have. Let me go to my Discord. I don't have a channel for story building, but I'll create one. All right, I just created a channel called MMO Storybuilding. Yep, I'm out, guys. I'm feeling kind of sick. I'm out. Have a great night, guys.